public rehearsal of Handel's fireworks music here at Vauxhall drew a crowd of 12,000 people. And it was here that the statue of him was put up in 1739, when he was 54, for the admiration of the visitors. An astonishing indication of the quality of music enjoyed by those who wined and dined in the gardens. Beside the Thames, at Chelsea, there opened in 1742 London's most spectacular new gardens, Ranelagh. The music would be indoors here in the massive rotunda. There were even gondolas on a canal. Where the canal once cut straight through to the great round building, which was over there, is now an ungeometrical and romantic garden. When the canal and rotunda were here, what most impressed many visitors was that once you'd paid your entrance money, 2 shillings and sixpence, everything was then free, including even refreshments in the rotunda. It was like being at a rather grand party, and I suspect that that was a large part of its appeal. Most of Ranelagh's patrons would never get invited to a party in a great house, but if they had been, they would certainly have spent their time marveling at the superb architecture and gazing with fascination at the fine clothes of the other guests, while being soothed by continuous music and indulged by something nice to sip or nibble. And that's exactly how it was at Ranelagh for a wide range of people. Horace Walpole reported, "The company is universal. You can hardly set your foot down without treading upon a Prince of Wales or Duke of Cumberland, and there are from dukes down to children from the Foundling Hospital." Not that everyone could get in, because 2 and 6 was a lot of money, but Ranelagh did demonstrate an intermingling of the upper and middle classes in England of a kind that was still rare at this time in Europe. Once inside the rotunda, you either promenaded while listening to the music, or else had supper in one of the boxes around the walls. The 8-year-old Mozart gave an organ recital here in 1764, but more typical of the music on offer would be this symphony by William Boyce. William Boyce, prolific and popular, was one of the two leading English composers of the day. The other, his arch-rival, was Thomas Arne. Each has left us a great patriotic song. Arne's was written in 1740 and became a sort of unofficial national anthem. In the mid-18th century, when the foundations of the future empire were being laid, the British were becoming increasingly aware that their precious foreign markets would often need protecting by a show of strength.
This was the charter of our land, and God left us on this reign. Rule, Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves. Britain never will be slaves.
It was the ships of the Navy, built from the heart of great oaks, which provided Boyce with his patriotic theme, in a year, 1759, which was famous for the number of British victories it provided.
Come cheer up, my lads, 'tis to glory we steer, to add something more to this wonderful year. To honor we call you, not praise you, I say, for who are so free as the sons of the wave? Heart alone are our ships, heart alone are our men, we always are ready, steady, boys, steady. We'll fight and we'll conquer again and again.
And conquer they did. The British were now fighting the French yet again, and this time on a global scale. In Canada, where heroic Wolfe fell, and even in distant India as well as in Europe. Horace Walpole wrote in that year, "We are forced to ask every morning what victory there is for fear of missing one."
We'll still make them run and we'll still make them sweat. Inside
For the other ranks, in the services, life held little glamour. For every British sailor killed in battle, nearly 100 died of disease. Rank-and-file soldiers, when not in their proper place, abroad, fighting for king and country, were generally regarded with contempt and even downright hostility. Military discipline was notoriously savage, but civilian justice was hardly more enlightened. In the year when Handel composed his Messiah, a girl of 19 was sentenced to the gallows for stealing goods valued at less than £1, and at Newgate Prison, convicted felons could be viewed ranged round a coffin at an eve of execution service. As always, it was easier to sing with enthusiasm about the glories of war if you had only gone so far from home as to a theatre for a night out. And it was in the theatres, themselves in fact quite rowdy and dangerous places at the time, that the patriotic songs would be demanded again and again. The words of Heart of Oak are by the great actor-manager David Garrick, who was one of the key figures in mid-18th century London. Such was his fame that he was painted in his various roles more often than any other man in the kingdom, except for the king himself. Also, previously unheard of for an actor, Garrick became respectable. His extremely happy marriage was a model of virtue and prosperity. Mrs. Garrick was a famous Viennese dancer who had come to London at the age of 22 and had been taken into the household of the Earl and Countess of Burlington. She and Garrick would continue to be welcome guests in aristocratic circles. And when they took tea on the riverside lawn of their own villa at Hampton, with the King Charles spaniels and a butler to hand round the cups, they looked very much like aristocracy themselves. If the tea was delivered to the other end of the lawn, there was the added attraction of the temple to Shakespeare which Garrick had built, a version of the temple which the Earl of Burlington had put up in his garden a few miles downstream at Chiswick, itself based on the Pantheon in Rome. Garrick's private life was in every way that of a fashionable gentleman. His villa, visible beyond the temple, had been enlarged for him by Robert Adam, and his riverside garden was laid out by Capability Brown. But his public life, as manager of Drury Lane Theatre, was rather less peaceful. The 18th century audience was a very demanding creature. On one occasion, enraged by Garrick's use of dancers from the enemy nation, France, the spectators stormed out of the theatre and went to smash the windows of his town house. Well, that was exceptional. But every night the people noisily demanded their money's worth, and that meant a full-length play and a shorter afterpiece, with plenty of music throughout. They liked songs and incidental music during the play, and then more songs in the intervals. That was when roast beef of old England was often called for. And at least 30 minutes of music before the curtain went up. And that was often of a very high quality. The concertos of Handel and Corelli were played so often in the theatres that they became extremely well known. For composers like Boyce and Arne, it was important to keep in with Garrick. And in 1749, he played on their rivalry by commissioning from each of them an afterpiece which was to be sung throughout. Arne's proved a failure, but Boyce's The Chaplet became one of the most popular musical entertainments of the time. The chaplet, with its idealized image of country life, was part of a new fashion in the theatre. But beneath the rustic charm, the lyrics reveal a somewhat unrustic cynicism.